You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. As always, up top, real quick, if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, go into that Apple store, that podcast app real quick. Hit us with that sweet 5 stars. It helps spread the gospel. Of course, as we always say, if you're listening on Spotify, Overcast, Downcast, Podbean, Luminary,
YouTube,
Stitcher.
so many options.
You just keep listening where you like to listen, because what's important, obviously, is that you are listening. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We even have a TikTok at Creep Street Podcast. We haven't started using it, but we will start soon. We just got to figure out what the fuck people actually use it for. Mm-hmm. With all that set aside, Maureen, I think we've got a fun one set up today.
I'm very excited. We do have a fun one today.
What are we talking about?
Cursed movie sets.
Lights, camera, terrifying action. This is so much fun. And I can tell a lot of our residents of Creep Street are very excited.
While doing research for this, checking out different movie sets or movies that have been considered cursed. And then you look into it and you realize that it's actually just really depressing and just negligence, honey.
Yeah.
But some are real.
Some are more just like freaky coincidences, stuff that could be paranormal. All right, well, let's get us started. What's our first movie?
Let's talk about The Exorcist.
Good God.
Let's open up hard. All right, The Exorcist. As we all know, big time fright fest, honey. Scary. But the scares were not only for the audience.
No.
Scary stuff happened throughout the filming and after the filming. So something with The Exorcist. This movie is really known for being haunted or cursed.
Yes, it is.
You know, hold on a second. Before I go any further, I really quickly just want to list off the main source for this show. We read a bunch of different articles, a bunch of different YouTube videos that were really helpful. Screen Rant was helpful, Entertainment Weekly, Vanity Fair, but the main thing was this TV show on Shudder.
Yeah, it's called Cursed Films. It is a 5-part docuseries on Shudder, on the Shudder app. Really interesting. It really does a deep dive into specific movies. It goes into the paranormal stuff, but it also deals with sometimes just people being shitty to other people. Sometimes it was a mixture of both. Sometimes
often it was.
Sometimes it was paranormal, but also people in charge, the people working, were kind of dicks also.
Right. And sometimes you wonder, maybe, is that a part of the curse?
Does it exacerbate?
Is that right?
Is
brings out the
exactly
negativity in people. The Exorcist. Starting with a little small, unknown, like, indie flick.
Okay.
And I think what's kind of cool about the curse with The Exorcist is that it really kind of plays into and amps up its own legend and its own kind of nastiness, its own stank.
Well, as we know, famously, when it was released, it was a firestorm. It was men and women fainting at the theater, you know, grown adults running, screaming out of the theater or throwing up, you know.
Oh, it's something that I kind of learned, though, as I was researching, was a lot of that stuff was totally genuine. There were people that were passing out and throwing up and having these really intense reactions, but I always kind of thought the narrative was like the audience reactions started and then the Exorcist marketing or PR team was like, oh, let's double down on this. When really that did happen, but they also kind of knew beforehand that that was going to happen. So even from the start, they really pumped up how controversial it was.
We also know the actors were hurt in real life. The scene where the girl is being whipped back and forth on the bed, she actually dislocated some of her vertebrae? She cracked something.
Fractured her lower spine.
As soon as they hit cut, she was bawling. This era of filmmaking where directors were kind of given free license to sort of torture performances out of actors.
Like, do whatever it takes to get the shot. Right? Eileen Burstyn also got hurt. She was, during one point in the movie, they used a kind of like rigging system where she was attached to a rope and someone yanked her back.
Right, because the daughter slaps her fuck.
Yeah, and she hit the back of her head really,
Yeah.
really hard on the ground, and she was in extreme pain, and they used that shot. And that's the kind of
Right.
thing where it's like, yeah, it really looks like she's in pain. Yeah, she's also probably concussed.
Right.
Also, the director, William Friedkin, he, as well as, hooking Linda Blair, who played Reagan, up to that machine that, like, snapped her spine, and, Eileen Burstyn, he told that guy to really yank her down, and she, hit her head on the ground really hard. He also was known for just having guns around so that he could pull them out and shoot them at any time. The actors would hear the gun going off and he would freak them out to get a reaction out of them.
It's like Elvis, baby.
Ooh, you love it. So all of these things that we've listed so far have been, you're like, okay, this might be a little bit more in the camp of what you guys were talking about with just people being
Just chode factor.
The chode factor.
Chode factor.
But now is where we come in and say, is the chode factor turned up by the curse factor? Something that The Exorcist had was that hook of that true story, because The Exorcist was based on a true story. So that kind of like immediately gets people involved in the film and just audience members. So, these negative injuries were happening on set, but what were the causes of that? We don't know. But one day the set caught on fire, and it really heavily destroyed the whole set except for Reagan's bedroom in
That's
the movie.
freaky.
And her room was untouched. Isn't that weird? Like,
That is
what are the
so
chances
wild.
of that? There were some deaths with people working on the film, and then also people closely related to people that were working on the film. For example, Linda Blair's grandfather died. I believe at least 2 actors died. A special effects expert was killed. People were dying at a weird rate. There was also a priest on set. His brother died, unexpectedly, which is
Right.
very weird. Just like things like that were happening. So in the movie, it begins with an archaeological dig in northern Iraq. And that is where they find this idol to the demon Pazuzu. And that is actually where the ancient demon or idol or whatever you would want to call it, actually it originates from. So the place is accurate.
Yes.
And that is, once again, one of those things that makes it more real and makes it a little bit scarier and makes you wonder, okay, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Something that is wild is that there was an actual murderer in The Exorcist. I hesitate to say actor because he wasn't really an actor.
Right.
Basically, at one point in the movie, Reagan goes to the hospital and she's getting a procedure done.
Right.
And their doctor performing the quote-unquote procedure is an actual doctor.
Right.
And the other people, the assistants in the room and stuff, are also actual assistants that were working at that hospital.
Right.
And one of those people was named Paul Batson. And later on, he confessed to murder.
Wow.
So yeah, this guy was on the set with Linda Blair with a child, and he was a murderer. Something that is so sad is that Linda Blair herself was very, very demonized after the movie was released. It's something that she doesn't talk about, and I, don't have a ton of information on it, but I do know that she needed to have a bodyguard as a child. People really didn't want to work with her. People didn't want to spend time with her, professionally and just socially, because the movie scared them so much and it seemed so real, and it felt so real, and people really believed that she was evil, which is so sad because that doesn't always happen. Like the little boy from The Omen, which we're going to get to, he didn't experience that treatment.
The Exorcist touched people in a profound way.
It really did.
In a way that is still raw. It's still, when you see it now, it's still raw.
Exactly. Those are the heavy hitters, if you will, with The Exorcist, and why some people feel it's haunted or cursed. All of this energy was brought into this space and attached to this film that, I mean, I'm not really surprised that there have been so many reactions and experiences that have been weird. Yeah, Dylan, well, since we just mentioned The Omen, can you give us a little bit of the tea?
Get your cups ready, because I got some piping hot tea.
Okay, honey?
So The Omen, yes, as you mentioned, came out, was a pretty big deal. Nominated for 10 Academy Awards, Best Picture, Best Actor, pretty big deal. So before The Omen even began production, they were having problems. People did not want this movie made.
No.
The Omen even had a spiritual advisor named Bob Munger. He kept warning them that making a movie about the devil was pretty much the same as inviting the devil over for dinner.
And people said that about The Exorcist, too.
Same, right. In an interview with Omen producer Harvey Bernhard, he said that Munger was always trying to get them to shut down the production, even from the very beginning, to the point where Bernhard started to buy into it.
Oh, okay.
And both attested to this later in an interview. Munger was quoted as saying,
I said, if you make this movie, you're gonna have some problems. If the devil's greatest single weapon is to be invisible, and you're gonna do something which is gonna take away his invisibility to millions of people, he's not gonna want that to happen.
And Bernard, he agreed. He said the devil just simply did not want this film to be made.
Oh, scary.
A few months before the shooting began, Gregory Peck, who starred in the film, his son committed suicide.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And just real quick, obviously, I don't mean to associate this family's tragedy with a silly movie curse.
Yes.
And I'm not going to say that was part of the curse. Obviously, this would have been a horrible family tragedy.
Right.
But you can understand why that would then put a cloud over this feeling of, oh man.
Exactly. I'm really glad you said that, because I wanted to mention that before too, that basically what you already just said, I just want to re-emphasize it, that a lot of the things that happen on these movie sets are kind of fun and spooky, and some of them are really, really tragic.
Yes.
So because of the nature of what we're talking about, it's relevant, and that's why we're bringing it up. But we by no means are saying that the only reason that they experienced this pain or whatever was because of
a curse.
Right. It's just relevant to the bigger picture, and we mean no disrespect.
Oh.
And you decide yourself what you feel is downright spooky and what you feel like is a coincidence.
Well, Gregory Peck's son, as I said, a few months before filming began, took his life. And this obviously only added to this idea that filming shouldn't happen, that it was cursed. And this Munger guy kept telling him, like, you shouldn't do it. And the director, Richard Donner, he was like, yeah, right. He didn't believe in all that stuff. So when it came time for Gregory Peck to fly over to London to meet with Richard Donner to start work on the film, his plane was struck by lightning. Then the producer, Mace Neufeld, flew over to London. His plane was struck by lightning.
What?
Then the writer, David Seltzer, flies over a few days later. His flight is struck by lightning. John Richardson, who was a designer who helped make the sets on the film of The Omen, this is fucking wild. After his work was done, he began working on the set of the film Bridge Too Far, which was filming in Holland. Or he was on a drive with his wife and a special effects artist, a sculptor named Liz Moore. They were in a car accident. Richardson himself was only knocked out, but when he came to in the hospital, he would learn that Liz Moore was not as lucky. In the accident, a tire flew through the windshield and decapitated her.
Oh my God.
Richardson would note the eerie similarity between her decapitation and the decapitation from The Omen.
Oh, that's right.
And he also stated that right before the accident, he recalled seeing a road sign that indicated they were 66.6 kilometers from the town of Ulmen. I think it's spelled O-M-M-E-N. I don't know how it's pronounced, if it's Omen or Ulmen or whatever, but yes.
Wow. Okay, that's
freaky.
Weird.
That's just weird.
I mean, maybe it was there, but he could see it because it was in his mind or something, but not in his mind like in a fake way.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe in his mind like the image was put into his mind.
Get this.
Okay.
You know that scene where Gregory Peck gets attacked by the Rottweilers?
Oh, yeah, that's sad because I like dogs.
In the cemetery? Yeah. Well, obviously they had a stunt man who would be in there. And actually, one time the dogs for real attacked this stunt man.
Oh, no.
Their teeth actually tore through the protective gear, and they even ignored the trainer when ordering them to stop. The stunt man was okay, but it was a very close call.
Wow.
Isn't that insane? And then here's the wildest thing. The production had rented a plane so they could do aerial shots for the film. Well, at the last second, another company I think based in China, they had bought them out. The company had better offer, and they got the plane.
Right.
So the Omen crew had to wait a few days till they could do their aerial shoots. But that was actually a blessing, as that plane crashed.
No fucking way.
The plane was taking off when it hit a flock of birds.
Oh.
And as it was coming down, it hit a car killing the pilot's wife and family. The pilot's family was in the car it hit.
What?
That's insanity.
Okay, so the plane hit the birds, crashed, got to a highway, and it hit the car with the pilot's family?
That's insane. Insane.
That doesn't just happen.
It doesn't just, that's weird.
And also what's weird too is that it's not just like on that plane it was supposed to be one person from the movie, which would be tragic enough.
Right.
But it's like it was supposed to have a bunch of people from the movie. I'm sure
Oh my
a lot
God,
of
yeah.
cameramen, producers, cinematographers,
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? Now, even the remake that they did in like 2005 or something had its own, shit.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Wow. How about we kick it on over to the Passion of the Christ, okay?
Oh
We're talking
my
Passion of the Christ, okay? This is a little bit different, okay? Because this is not a horror movie. I mean, it's not a horror movie in the traditional sense, but, it's a lot. But the Passion of the Christ still very, very much fits in with paranormal or unexplained phenomena. So Jim Caviezel, he played Jesus. He, while filming, dislocated his shoulder, was accidentally whipped for real. He was allergic to the makeup that he had to wear.
Oh, God.
And he was so allergic that it gave him terrible headaches and skin infections. He got hypothermia and pneumonia, and he was struck by lightning.
Dear God.
And then I believe it's the assistant director. He was struck by lightning twice. This was all during production.
Holy God.
Isn't that insane? Once again, the space of it where it's filmed is kind of like a hotspot.
Right.
For all of these things. So speaking of guys with absolutely shredded abs, let's take it over to Ryan Reynolds. Okay,
Ooh.
Ryan Reynolds was in the lovely, incredible movie. It's actually bad, but he was in the Amityville Horror.
Oh, that remake, that
The remake.
05.
Oh,
that
yeah.
05 remake.
Oh yeah, so he was playing old George Lutz.
George Lutz
Okay.
was
Turned into a fucking hunk.
Oh my God, got real young and like real hot, like fast,
Yeah.
which is cool. But so Ryan Reynolds said that during filming, he often would wake up at 3:15
Right.
a.m. on the dot. And apparently this happened multiple times, not just like a couple. Like this
Right.
was something that was repeatedly happening.
Well, isn't that pivotal to the story,
I was
too?
just going to say, because it is thought Ronnie DeFeo, who is the original murderer from the Amityville Horror home, killed his family at 3:15 a.m. And George Lutz, when he was living in the home, he often woke up at 3:15 a.m.
Right.
too. Now Ryan Reynolds has said he didn't know if this was just his subconscious coming in or if this really was because of some outside force.
Right,
He doesn't
right.
know. A little bit before they began filming the remake, a mysterious corpse of a fisherman washed ashore right by set.
Dear God.
Which isn't necessarily, that
Right.
can happen at any time, and that's not, unfortunately, that's not altogether uncommon.
Right. It's not good, but we're just saying but I wouldn't
Right.
think someone doesn't want this film getting made.
Right, exactly. The real George Lutz, he died very unexpectedly only about a month before the movie was released,
Oh, wow.
which is weird. Back when the original movie was being made, the lead actor who would play George Lutz, he said that he felt a very dark presence while he was reading the book, and some of his clothes fell down in a way that they wouldn't fall on their own, which is kind of weird. And I love the story of Amityville Horror, and so just so you guys know, we're gonna do a great series in Amityville. It's coming.
The plan is this December, we're going to do a big Amityville, because that's kind of when the Lutz's story happened.
Yeah.
It was in the month of December, so we wanted to save it for December. But yes, that one's coming, baby.
But for the next movie, I kind of wanted to go in a different direction because this movie isn't actually horror or really scary in that kind of way at all.
Right.
It's called Introducing Dorothy Dandridge.
Oh.
This was a made-for-TV movie. I believe it came out in 1999, and it is starring the lovely, beautiful, talented Halle Berry.
Ooh.
And it's a movie about, as you probably
Right.
assume,
Old
Dorothy
Dorothy
Dandridge. And she was the first African-American woman to be nominated for Best Actress. So Halle Berry said that she has always felt a very strong connection with Dorothy Dandridge. Ever since she saw her first Dorothy Dandridge movie, she was so inspired and really, really admired her work. And Halle Berry was actually a huge part in getting this movie made. While Halle Berry was trying to get this movie made,
Yeah.
she actually got a chance to try on a dress that was owned by Dorothy Dandridge. She tried it on and she said it fit her absolutely perfectly.
Right.
Like, it was just the perfect fit for Halle Berry.
Good God.
And she was like, we really got to make this movie happen. So then she pushed through. While the movie was being made, she experienced a lot of paranormal activity in her home.
Oh.
She was interviewed by Ebony magazine, and she said, I'd come home and the housekeeper would say she'd heard my vanity chair moving upstairs in my bathroom, and our fridge door would fly open by itself. I'm not kidding. There's also a lot of instances where she would close and lock a door, and she had a security system, and she would come home and the door would be open, but the security system hadn't gone off.
That's so weird.
Things like that. And while Halle Berry was working on the film, she actually became very, very close friends with a woman named Jerry Branton, who was super, super close with Dorothy Dandridge in real life. And Jerry Branton was very, very vocal about how similar Halle Berry and Dorothy Dandridge were, about how just the way that they move, the way they behave, their personal lives had a lot of parallels.
Right.
That were very, very interesting. And she said that the first time she saw Halle Berry, she was taken aback by how similar she was. She had that dress. I believe it was the same dress, or maybe it was another Dorothy Dandridge dress. And it was so, so special to her. She kept it in paper and plastic, and she had kept it in this one room in her house. One day she was hanging out with a friend at home, and they heard what sounded like boiling water, and they went into the room, and it was the plastic on the bag just rustling itself. She said another time she saw a doll's dress floating right above the Dorothy Dandridge dress that she had.
Wow.
Yeah, which I don't really know what that means with
A
the
doll's
doll's
dress floating.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means, but
Interesting.
Halle Berry herself has been quoted saying that she has experienced these things and that they
wild.
really, really freaked her out.
Yeah, I bet.
But when they happened, she contacted her friend, the friend named Jerry, and she told her what was happening. And Jerry said to Halle, "Honey, I talk to Dottie all the time. And if she is at your house, she means you no harm."
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
And there are a good amount of people. I was able to find a few different sources that think that this is a possibility.
Right.
They think that maybe Halle Berry is Dorothy Dandridge reincarnated.
Oh, well, goodness gracious.
They were both born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh.
Dorothy Dandridge died in 1965, and Halle Berry was born in 1966. Dorothy Dandridge was nominated for an Academy Award, and 2 years after Introducing Dorothy Dandridge came out, Halle Berry won Best Actress, making her the first African-American woman to win Best Leading Actress.
Well, hot damn.
So I don't know.
That's cool.
So
Well,
that
if anything, maybe like kindred spirits.
Yeah, isn't that
or-
kind of cool?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that one's not really like a curse, more so just kind of like paranormal and kind of sweet. Let's talk about the Conjuring universe. So let's start with the first movie, The Conjuring. Apparently, right from the start, when the screenwriters would be on the phone doing teleconferences with the actual Perron family.
Right.
P.S. Shout out to our earlier episode, The Perron Family Haunting.
Episode 11. Go check it out if
can
you
hear it,
haven't.
yeah. So when they were on the phone with the real Perron family, they had so many phone issues. And this was, I don't know exactly when these phone calls took place, but I can't imagine they were much after 2010. There's no reason why there should be a ton of static and calls dropping constantly.
Exactly.
It was very, very weird. And Lorraine Warren herself actually said that made sense because kind of like what we were saying with The Omen and The Exorcist and The Passion of the Christ, actually.
Right.
When you are making a movie about evilness doesn't want it to be made. You know what I mean? They don't want to show good overcoming evil. They don't want to show themselves.
Exactly.
So they'll do whatever it takes to kind of slow the movie from being made or stop it or whatever. So Lorraine Warren, right from the start, said, this makes sense that you're having these phone issues because whatever is going on, does not want this movie to be made. James Wan got a puppy, and the director of the movie, and apparently his puppy would be focused on a certain area of the house and be barking and following certain things and just acting very strange. And not just strange in a way that all puppies are, little weirdos.
Exactly.
In a way that it was like, it seemed like it was seeing something.
Right.
And this was before and during filming.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that at one point, the hotel that the cast and the crew were staying in, they had to be evacuated because it caught on fire.
Oh.
Okay, so weird. Vera Farmiga said that she often felt very uneasy and nervous, and she actually refused to rehearse or work on her scenes alone or at night.
Oh.
So it really scared her, and she said one time she opened up her laptop and there were 3 scratches on her screen.
Ooh,
And
that's creepy.
She was the last one to use it. She doesn't know what that's from. And as some of you may know, 3 scratches or 3 knocks or 3 marks are often signs of demonic activity, like they're mocking the Holy Trinity.
Exactly, right.
Apparently, after filming was completed, Vera Farmiga woke up one morning with 3 scratch marks on her leg that were not there when she went to sleep. And there was lots of other things happening on set where Andrea Perrin said that there were lots of things that the filmmakers, either the James Wan, the director, or the screenwriters, they knew things about the Perrin family that they had never been told before.
Right.
So that movie was just a very interesting experience. The Nun, a part of the Conjuring universe, there was some activity there. They actually filmed that movie in a real Transylvanian castle, which is kind of cool, adds up the spook factor.
Right, exactly.
And the director said that one time he saw 2 shadowy figures in a cell. At first he didn't think anything of it. He turned around and those figures were gone.
Oh my God.
So what's that about? We don't know. In the original Annabelle movie, there were a lot of paranormal experiences as well.
Right.
There were 3 finger marks along a dusty window.
Ooh.
And the demon in that movie had 3 fingers or 3 claws.
Right.
So that's kind of just another interesting aspect to it.
Exactly.
But I think some of the most fun and kind of weirdest stuff that I found was about Annabelle Comes Home.
Really? Okay.
Now, Annabelle Comes Home, that one is the one where it's Ed and Lorraine's daughter, Judy, is home with her 2 babysitters and shit goes down.
That's right.
So the girl who plays Judy, her name is McKenna Grace, and she was kind of the center of the experiences, the paranormal experiences on set. She said there was one time they were on set when all of the lights just went out unexpectedly.
Oh, wow.
Someone said, "Annabelle, are you there?" The lights came back on, and McKenna Grace's nose was bleeding profusely.
Oh my God.
And she couldn't get it to stop. And as soon as she left the set, her nose stopped bleeding. She says that she does get light nosebleeds because of her allergies sometimes, but never that heavy. That kind of like what we're saying, where this isn't impossible, but very weird.
Right.
Her nose doesn't usually bleed that much, and also the timing is crazy. She also said that one time she woke up and she said there was a cut near the center top part of her forehead that made a triangle.
Ooh.
And she doesn't know what it's from. And then she said that there was often loss of power in her trailer for kind of no reason. That didn't really happen to anyone else that often. Sometimes doors would be open that she had left shut. She also said that sometimes there was a weird, not terrible, but just weird funky smell in her trailer when things weren't working. And then when the lights were repaired, that smell would go away.
That's interesting.
And she had a rosary that she got as a gift. And apparently she had it with her. I think she was wearing it. And it was a new rosary. And when she was wearing it on set, the crucifix part just fell onto the floor when there's really no reason for that. Another time, she brought a camera onto set and she took some pictures. She took a photo of Annabelle with actually 2 different cameras. And both of those pictures came out black.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was the whole photo was black, if it was just kind of that area she was, where Annabelle was, I don't know.
Which one did we see at Music Box?
I think it was this one.
Remember they had a doll there?
Yes, I think it was the real prop from the movie.
Right.
But
it wasn't the real doll that it's based on, obviously. It was...
What she was taking a photo of, McKenna Grace, the actor, was the real Annabelle.
Oh.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. was the real Annabelle. And it came out black like that. So at first she thought that it was because it's in a protective case.
Right.
So I guess they took it out of the protective case, and it still did that. And then she took a picture with Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. Patrick Wilson was wearing a crucifix on his
Right.
neck. He was in costume. His
Right.
Ed Warren, wore one. And she said in those pictures, you couldn't really see the cross. It was kind of whited out, and there was like a black shadow around where the cross was.
Interesting.
But the rest of the photo was fine. Yes, and apparently, just another small thing, one time a journalist went to set and his watch just completely stopped working. Like it would jump ahead hours, jump back hours, switch dates, and just was
That's
acting
weird.
completely weird. And apparently, according to him, once he left set, it stopped, and that's never happened again. Okay, peeps, so we're going from one iconic horror series to another. Let's talk about The Curse of Poltergeist.
The one
this is
everyone,
huge.
when you think of a haunted movie set, you think of Poltergeist.
Oh yeah, this one is so notorious for it.
Yeah.
It's so spooky.
This one's just wild.
So many weird things happened on the movie set, and just the people involved with the movie.
Yeah.
Now, two actors from the films, they tragically died. Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunn. Both of the deaths are very, very sad. We're going to get to them in just a minute, though. First, I wanted to talk about some other curses or issues or scary things that happened on the set. One thing was, in the movie, the little boy of the family, he is getting choked by this, like, clown machine looking thing. And there was a mechanical error, and the boy actually was getting choked by this clown.
Oh my God.
I mean, can you imagine how scary that would be for
That's-
that kid?
Jesus God, yeah.
That's insane. And Will Sampson, he was in the second movie. He was a Native American actor. He was also in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He has done a lot of really great iconic movies. He was also a shaman, and he performed an exorcism on the set of the movie.
Oh, wow.
Because they were so concerned. Just because they were getting a lot of weird feelings, and they just felt like it was best
Right.
to be ahead of it. And Will Sampson, he died shortly thereafter at age 53 of liver failure and malnutrition, which that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? That doesn't just happen to someone that age. There was also a character in the second movie that died before they were able to do his scenes in the third movie.
Oh, okay.
There was a death mask made of his face, so prosthetics could be made, and another actor wore those prosthetics around. And it's one of those things where that's fine. Nothing is technically wrong with that. It's just spooky. But it possibly could have been made before he died, but also it could have been made of his face after he died. I don't know. Now, unfortunately, one of the actresses in the movie, Dominique Dunn, she was in a abusive relationship with a man named John Sweeney. And they had a lot of issues. It was very tumultuous. It's super sad.
Yeah.
You really hate to hear about this. And he actually strangled her. She didn't die right away. She died about 5 days later. They had to take her off life support. And John Sweeney, the murderer, he only spent, I believe, 3.5 or 2.5 years in prison for the crime. And Heather O'Rourke, she's the little girl from the movies. She died unexpectedly when she was, I believe, 11. She might have just turned 12, but I believe she was 11. She was misdiagnosed with Crohn's.
Right.
When she actually had some sort of bowel obstruction of some
Right.
kind, and it exploded, and she died. The studio made the director complete Poltergeist 3. Unfortunately, she passed away during filming, so they had to use a body double and not show her face, and everyone that worked on the film just said it was so bizarre, and they really hated it, and they really wished that the film could have just not been released, but they had to.
The director says point blank he hates it.
Because he had a very close relationship with Heather. Heather, was so sweet and talked to him about how she wanted to be a director, and they really got along. It was really hard, and these are tragic things that happened. And some people attribute the fact that these things happened because in the movie, Jo Beth Williams, she's like swimming through this mud pit essentially.
Right.
And skeletons start popping up.
Oh, yeah.
It is believed that they used real skeletons for that scene, and that maybe that has caused some of these issues.
That's interesting. Which is not, and they even make a point in the documentary. I think it's actually more common than we probably think it is. But essentially, then you got to ask yourself, well, is it coming from all of that,
Right.
or are we putting all of that on it?
Exactly. It's like, is this really happening, or can we not wrap our heads around
Right.
these terrible things happening and need to find something to blame it on? I don't know. But it's kind of interesting because they put this into words very well in the Shudder series, that the curse with this movie really, really adds to the lore and the feeling of the movie, because the movie is kind of about a family that isn't aware of their actions and how it is affecting the other side or whatever.
Right.
And maybe that's what was happening with the filming,
Right.
you know, using real skeletons or just being about these dark things that are bringing in negative energy. But the special makeup effects artist, his name is Craig Reardon, and he feels personally offended by the curse of Poltergeist. He says that it doesn't do justice to the memories of the people that have passed, writing it off as if it was just caused because of a curse.
It's a very valid way to...
Right. And I mean, and he comes right out and says that they used real skeletons in A House on Haunted Hill and in Frank Whale's Frankenstein. Like you said, these things do happen. It's easy to be confused. Part of you wants to find a reason for what's happening. You do want to find a reason for why this is happening. That one is a very hard one to kind of figure out.
It's definitely the most famous.
It's definitely the most famous, and especially because there's so much nostalgia for people around the Poltergeist movies. Now, citizens of the Milky Way, we're going big time.
Big time. What's going to close us out?
We're going to close it out with Rosemary's Baby.
First comes love, then comes marriage.
Rosemary's Baby, let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
I think one of the best horror movies ever.
Yeah.
The director is Roman Polanski,
Right.
who is goddamn trash, okay? So
Right.
I do feel conflicted talking about how much I like the movie because he's an actual pedophile, and that's going to come up. But Rosemary's Baby, similarly to The Exorcist or The Omen, it really shook people. It was so intense.
Right.
It was really, really disturbing for a lot of people, very scary. And it is still a very, very scary movie.
Right.
But especially at the time, it really, really made some waves.
Right.
Once again, similarly to what we were saying, there was a lot of negative attention and drama and worry and kind of panic about the movie even before it was made and while it was being made. So there's a lot of attention drawn on it that way, kind of putting the negative energy or cursed imagery on top of the movie. But then once the movie came out, shit really fucking hit the fan.
Yeah. That's what's weird about this particular movie.
Right.
It all happened after.
Like, I'm sure stuff happened on the set, but the real wild stuff happened afterwards, like you said. So, quick thing before we really get into it. Something that's just interesting is that a very, very small role in the film is played by a man who later started a cult
Yes.
called the Buddha Field. We're going to
Yes.
do a whole episode on it.
And that's coming. We got to do that soon.
We will. We'll make that a
We've got to
priority
do
because
that
that one is a wild cult. So, in the fall of 1968, the composer of the film, his name was Krzysztof Komeda. I believe he was Polish, so if I'm saying that wrong,
he was
sorry.
Polish, yeah.
He was Polish, so sorry if that's wrong. He was just kind of hanging out at a party being silly, and his friend, Marek Halesko, accidentally pushed him off a ledge.
Yeah.
They were just joking around at a party. And Merrick killed himself because he, felt so much guilt. So that is a very weird occurrence.
Yeah.
Possible to happen on its own, but along with the fact that he was just working on this movie alone.
Right. That's where
weird.
it all starts.
Another thing that happened. In 1969, keep in mind, the film came out in 1968. The producer, William Castle, was getting so much hate mail because of the movie that he got severe kidney stones. He had to go to the hospital, and apparently he was hallucinating scenes from the film. He was hallucinating saying, "Rosemary, for God's sakes, drop the knife."
Holy God.
Isn't that weird? Crazy. And then he recovered, but he never really achieved that fame again. and possibly most famously attributed to this curse of Rosemary's Baby. Roman Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, along with her friend Jay Sebring and other friends, were killed by Charles Manson and his cult, the Manson family. We're actually going to do a whole Charles Manson, Sharon Tate murder episode in August.
We're going to tell you what's important to this episode.
Yes.
But we're going to kind of just skirt past this one because we want to save that.
A little bit of all of that. But what we will say now is that Sharon Tate at the time was a rising star in Hollywood. She was kind of like the next it girl. And she was just off of a movie called Eyes of the Devil, where she was actually playing a witch, which is interesting. And that movie finished, and then Rosemary's Baby began. And at the time, I don't think she was married to Roman Polanski yet. I think they were dating. But anyway, she really, really, really wanted the part. She wanted to be Rosemary in Rosemary's Baby.
Right.
And apparently Roman Polanski did too. He wanted her to play the part. He thought she would be great. But Paramount said no, and they wanted Mia Farrow instead. So Mia Farrow, of course, famously got the part, and it's now such an iconic role for her. But Sharon Tate still was like so drawn to the role and to the film that she was just kind of like there a lot. She was kind of just around set, around filming, watching, and she was even a guest at one of the parties.
Oh, wow.
In the movie. She's just like an unaccredited extra, essentially.
Oh, wow.
She just wanted to be a part of it so bad. And some people do believe that it was Sharon Tate being around this film that kind of got her interested in the occult.
Oh, wow.
And a friend of hers said, now this is not a direct quote from Sharon Tate, this is what a friend said Sharon said, so keep this in mind. But apparently, Sharon Tate said, "The devil is beautiful. Most people think he's ugly, but he's not." So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. So, some time goes by. So Sharon Tate is 8.5 months pregnant, and Roman Polanski had to go out of town for some reason. I can't remember exactly what it was. But in his autobiography, he said that he had a grotesque thought when he was leaving her the last time. He said, "You will never see her again." I don't trust a goddamn word he says, but that's what he says, so there we go. Once again, we'll get into all the details of this later. But then Sharon Tate, along with her friends, were murdered by Charles Manson's cult. And on the walls, in blood, was written Helter Skelter.
Right.
Helter Skelter is a Beatles song. This is a Beatles song on the White Album.
Right.
And the White Album was mainly written at this Indian retreat or Indian meditation center. And Mia Farrow was there.
Interesting.
Mia Farrow was there when the Beatles were writing this song.
That's interesting.
They write Helter Skelter in blood, and then about 12 years later, John Lennon is assassinated across the street from where Rosemary's Baby was filmed.
Wow, I didn't know that. I knew they had connected it to Lennon. I was like, but Lennon was years later. Like, how is that?
Right.
But then I didn't know it was across the street from where they...
Right, and especially like since Mia Farrow was there when they were writing the White Album.
That is wild.
Isn't that
wild?
So weird?
That is wild.
And so many weird things happening and coincidences, and like it's so tragic, but you can't help but be fascinated.
It's true. And because this time of year, typically when the big summer blockbusters would be playing.
Right.
And because that's all kind of out of sorts this year, we thought, well, dang it, let's do a movie about those blockbusters.
Oh man, what a wild ride. I'm like,
it was wild.
Oof, I need
Two
to
thumbs up from this critic.
Oh, I would give it 5 stars.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. Good night and goodbye.